Welcome one, welcome all to Talking VS, the best place to get all the inside info on SA's esports scene. Now today, we're talking about the CS2 map pool for the new season. I know you're wondering, map pool, what's that all about? I have the experts in the house. Okay, now one of the things obviously we've done is seen CS go from Go to CS2. We've got a new game that the pros have been tucking into as far as the maps, which are such a huge consideration from a strategic perspective. What's changed? Is there a big fuss around the differences between the two games?
I'd say there definitely are differences between the
Yeah.
games, but not necessarily as far as the maps are concerned. If we're
Okay.
going to isolate that aspect of the
Yes.
conversation,
Yeah.
there's been a few tweaks and reworks, but there's nothing drastic in the change between the two games.
Yeah, the only thing that would have changed between the two games would be breaking smokes, which does change a lot of the map dynamics.
Sure.
Like on Nuke, completely new map with breaking smokes makes going downstairs a lot harder.
Yeah, crossing along on dust, yeah.
Pretty much it affects every single map differently. So I think going from the one to the next, it does change, but maybe just like slows things down and maybe like speeds up the pace a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. It does change the way the maps play to a degree. So the maps themselves haven't changed, but Slowy is correct to highlight that the dynamic of breaking smokes can change the way the map plays. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that because maps, you know, we spoke about, we've been educating people about in-game leaders and why would you choose a specific map? Why are maps so important, right? Because obviously there's a line of sight and all these things in terms of how to use a map. For someone listening to it, they're like, what does the map? But it's actually the arena, right, that the players are playing it. Why is it so important?
So you'll get two different types of maps. You'll get very brawly maps where teams just go at each other, and you'll get tactical maps.
Yeah.
Now, as an in-game leader, if you are not prepared for the game that you're going to be playing, you kind of want to do a brawly map because then it just goes down to like straight aim with a little bit of technicalities, whereas a tactical map is straight on, like you need to dot your T's, cross your I's, and actually pretty much have a plan.
Yeah.
So you can't just go into a tactical map with no idea of how it's going to go. So each IGL will kind of have their favorite map on what they prefer calling on because they maybe have a deeper understanding. But majority of the maps, as I said, you've got technical and then you've got the brawly ones.
It also comes down to aligning the skills and the strengths of your team with the way that the maps play. Obviously, as you were highlighting, the maps, which are essentially the arenas, have got different architecture, different layouts, different sizes of the maps. Some are a lot more narrow and claustrophobic. Some of them are really big and broad, where there's a lot more space to work with. And that's where it comes down to what type of players you have on your team, what their skill sets are. If you have a sniper rifle player, the AWPer, remember we discussed that one last week. If you have an AWPer on your team who likes to take time to feel out the rounds, then you want to play one of these nice big maps. But if you have a star rifler who just loves to get his hands dirty, be in the thick of things in the action, you want to play an Inferno then, or you want to play an Ancient where you can just send them straight up into a gunfight immediately at the start of the round.
Okay, so how does a team obviously benefit from using certain maps? Obviously, it's familiarity, having run the same thing over and over again. Is that really the only thing? Is it's a form of practice for everyone included in the squad, or is it a way of also just finding out where the nooks and crannies are to, you know, drive your strategy home?
Yeah, essentially each team will have their kind of bans and picks, as we spoke about the whole veto process. When it comes to those bans and picks, you want to lean towards where your 5 players are more comfortable.
Okay.
Each player maybe plays that position differently, or they might play it better. And each position, when you find like one map where all 5 players play really well and then the in-game leader has a good understanding, that's where you want to lean towards because that's essentially your comfort zone.
Yes.
So the thing is, when you start building on all 7 maps and you become comfortable on all 7, then you can start getting into a more like intricate veto process where you start banning maps that your opponent is comfortable on. You make them uncomfortable.
Sure. Okay, so I guess both sides will have to know all the maps, and it's about working to your strengths and deriving your opponent from having an advantage with their map.
I mean, it's very difficult to try and cover all 7 bases though. So you'll often have a team who are very good on 2 to 3 maps, okay on 3 maps, and then 1 or 2 maps that they just want nothing to do with. If you have more than one map that you don't play, you can find yourself in trouble because you can only ban one map. Remember, in the veto phase, you only get to remove one map. So it's important that you don't have too many weaknesses. But at the same time, you also want to prioritize certain maps because although all maps are different, some maps do play similarly. So you can have 2 or 3 maps where you have quite a similar game style and the way you approach that map. So even though it's not, like I was saying, it's not necessarily unique to just one map. You can take that style, cookie cutter, and put it into a few different maps as well.
There we go. That makes sense. So let's talk about some of the big maps coming into the map pool for the year. What are they? What makes them significant? And do you think, as players yourself, will they give people any trouble, or they're getting used to them?
Well, I mean, the new map that just got re-added now was Overpass for Anubis.
Right.
We don't really understand why that happened, because Anubis was
Says
a
the Anubis enjoyer, by the way.
Anubis was fun. It's like
I
Mirage.
can tell. The one
just-
was celebrating, the one was like, why? So
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like if you're going to bring Overpass in, you have to maybe remove a map that hasn't been altered in a while. I mean, there's Mirage that has had like certain changes, but like almost nothing has changed in the last, I don't even know
Because
how
you don't
long.
have to tweak greatness, Aaron.
It gets a bit boring. Same
Talk
same,
about Inferno.
same thing.
If we're going to talk about boring, then Inferno has to be the conversation. I'm so happy to see Overpass reintegrated though, because I feel like it's a map that rewards team play, tactical, methodical approach to the game, where you're sinking hours into figuring out your strats. It's not just rewarding the guy who can run in first and is better at moving a mouse on a mouse pad. It actually rewards the people who are working hard on their strats that, like Aaron said, crossing their T's, dotting their I's, the way they're methodically going through those processes and motions. It's rewarding the fundamental aspects of the game, as opposed to, like I said, just brawling and just playing this messy style where it's all about getting kills. I prefer highlighting a far more broad aspect of the game than just reducing it to trying to frag as much as you can.
okay, so in terms of teams and maps, which teams are good at which maps and why?
So you'll get certain teams that are just have raw firepower, and they will lean towards the brawly maps because all they want to do is get in your face
Yeah.
and just try and
End
kill
it
you.
quick.
Literally just push, and just try and end it like that. But then you'll get the teams that might not be as frag power, or as much frag power, but then they all lean more towards tactical maps because all they have to do is outsmart you.
Yes.
All they have to do is just, okay, cool, this is where all of your firepower is going to be, we're going to go over there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's what can kind of bridge the gap. If you are lacking in the firepower department, you can make up for it in the tactical department.
Right.
And I'd say the tactical maps are more Overpass, Train, absolutely. And then I'd say, I mean, Dust 2's always been regarded as a very brawly map, but I feel like there is a bit more nuance to the map now. I'd say Ancient, Mirage, certainly still a brawly map. I think those are like the two most brawly maps for me as well. Inferno is probably somewhere in between. So that's how, if you can kind of like categorize the maps in that fashion, you could then take them, the skill sets of the teams, and then just adopt those maps as a batch.
Okay, so on that note, which teams are brawlers and which teams are the tacticians?
That's a bit of a tough one. I know that Bravado, for example,
Yeah.
is a mix of both.
There we go.
Like they have the brawns and the brains. I would say Nixa as well are, I wouldn't say as much firepower, still a high firepower team,
Yeah.
but when you have Elusive on your team, you've got a big brain on your team.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Nixa have got Elusive, who's now returned back to competing in South Africa. He was actually working at Comic-Con alongside myself and Kanye as an
Yes,
analyst and a
yes,
commentator. He's now, he got the bug bitten last year and he couldn't help himself. So
Yeah,
he's
he
now
was tired of being out on the outside.
Exactly. He didn't want to be on the commentator's desk on Championship Sunday. He wanted to be on the stage competing. But Slow is absolutely right. He has that mind for the game, the tactical depth, and so he'll certainly be bringing that and integrating it into the team that he's calling for. But then there are some other teams like Nexus, for example, not Nexus, OG, Omnius Gaming, for example. They're just going to look to go and take fights and make you uncomfortable and get in your face. So they'd more look to play those Mirages and Ancients.
So how do you get good at a map? Is it a case of when you see it on your computer screen, that's like the only time you interact with it? Or are your coaches printing out the big map itself and showing you on a table? I mean, I'm getting a bit carried away, but is it
No,
that intense?
that is a thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, to get good at a map, it's pretty much running into a brick wall until you break it. It's like the kind of the Skulk Burger kind of vibe. You know, just carry on running in and
Yeah.
just see what happens. But I mean,
Right.
like, run into it, and then as soon as you find out what's working, what isn't working, you've got to watch the replay, find out why it wasn't working.
Right.
You make the small adaptations until it works, and then you go from there. But it's essentially getting good at a map is just getting as much experience as you can, finding out
reps
what's
in the
not.
gym.
Yeah, pretty much.
You start at the baseline
Yeah.
where there's very standard ways of approaching a map that everybody will follow initially. And then the more you play the map, like you're saying, the more reps you get in, the more you'll realize how you can tweak it and just dial it to your favor in terms of the players that you have
Right.
and how you can then extract the most out of that map. Like Aaron was saying there, it's just about breaking that wall down. And as you play it more and more, the more familiar you become with it as a team, and the less you actually have to then plan, because you actually have, everybody knows, if X happens, we respond with Y,
Yeah.
because we've been in that situation already and we know what works.
That's what I was going to ask about. Is there such a thing as map discipline?
Absolutely.
In terms
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
and what does that look like for
So
players?
a lot of map discipline comes from depending on like who has the advantage at the time. So now you're playing 5 against 5. Generally, you want to take some piece of control, either as T or as CT. You want to take piece of control so you have the advantage.
Yes.
And as soon as the team takes that, you need to pretty much, it's like chess. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to keep on moving around.
100%.
And if you get an advantage, like getting a kill, for example, as a CT, your composure and your like patience
Yes.
is rewarded by waiting for them to come to you now,
'Cause
because
now
you
they're in
have the man
surge.
advantage.
Gotcha.
But there is such a fine line between discipline and taking initiative, because you also have to give that little bit of leash to the players in the team to be like, I recognize an opportunity here and I'm going to take that opportunity. But if they overstep that mark, then they give up a really important piece of the map in the round, and that then in turn makes the round so much more difficult for the rest of the team. So it's such a fine margin, and finding that balance is really important and can make the difference between being good on a map and being great on a map.
Okay, and then in terms of the maps, how do they affect economy? Like, does a map give you different decisions in terms of what kind of gear you get, and how does that inform your loadout?
So I would say that all of the maps are the same in terms of like what you receive. But I would say the biggest thing when it comes to economy and maps is certain maps are CT-sided and certain maps are T-sided, and they'll lean towards, you know, whichever one
Yes.
is favored. But majority of those maps, if you don't handle your economy well, if you don't save when you need to, if you don't push when you need to, if you don't punish when you need to, that is where you can get absolutely steamrolled.
I think also a connection between the economy and the maps is
Yeah.
that some maps lend themselves more to going for force buys, which is where you don't have enough money to get all the rifles and the sniper and the utility you need. You get some SMGs and pistols and some light util.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're playing on CT side Inferno, you might be inclined to go for a force buy because you know you can make it work in the narrow choke points. But if you're playing, let's say, CT side Dust 2, for example, it's really long-range gunfights, you can't really extract the strength out of the pistols and the SMGs as well. So maybe then you'll save your money to then buy in the next round. So I think there's also a link between economy and maps.
Okay, so with all that considered, and looking at the guys who are going to be performing at this level, what is the decision making when it comes to choosing your strongest map and the map that you don't want your opponent to have?
That's a
It depends now. Are you the favorite or you're the underdog? Because
Yeah.
if you're the favorite,
Yes.
like Bravado going into Comic-Con, you want to play to your strengths. Let's say that they're playing against, we'll use the same example, Omnius Gaming, who are one of the underdogs coming into the competition now. If you're Omnius and you love Mirage, and you're playing Bravado and they love Mirage, you as the underdog, you can't pick into your opponent's strengths because they're the favorite. You've got to try and find another map that maybe you're not super comfortable on, but if you know they're also uncomfortable
Yeah.
on, then you've got to look to try and find some sort of an edge or an advantage in the
Right.
veto in that way.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if you are, as you said, like if you are the underdog, you need to pick a map that is uncomfortable for everybody, but you have to also have the confidence that we are going into this game when no one expects us to win, which means we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And I mean, how awesome is it seeing like teams go into a map that they're not favored in and then look like they're naturals at it? Does that happen often?
Yeah,
Or?
Yeah.
because you get pocket picks as well, where you know a team that haven't played a map throughout the season, they're then practicing it on the side, all hush hush, and then they bring out the big guns at LAN event, and you go up against that team, and you'll always study a team's specific maps that they play, so you know, okay, their best map's Inferno. We don't really like Inferno. We're going to ban Inferno. All of a sudden, you get to the event and you're thinking, okay, well, they don't like Ancient, so we don't have to ban Ancient because they won't pick it. So you leave Ancients in the pool, and you have a look, they've picked Ancient, where's that come from? So you can find these little ways to try and catch your opponents off guard in the veto like that as well.
There you go. I like that strategy. So the coach pre the event says, listen, let's just have one in the bag that they don't think we're going to use, and then we can bring it out. Have you ever been in that situation? Have you snuck one out like that?
So I've never snuck one out like that, but I've been on the receiving end of people doing that,
yes.
but the problem is it never really went well for them. I think I've done it twice against, I think it was the Goliath lineups.
Inferno.
Where it was, one was one was Overpass where they picked it into us and we beat them, I think it was like 16-5.
Okay.
And then they did the same thing again on Vertigo.
Yeah.
And then I think it was in like the first 3 rounds that we realized that they anti-stratted the hell out of us. So I told Mistem, my captain back in the day, I was like, let me just call random things and then just see if it works. And we ended up beating them like, I think it was like 16-5 or 16-6. And I was like, okay. Never played the map before,
It's
but
worth
it's fine.
a try though. You know, you got to, because
Yeah.
if you're the underdog, that really doesn't stand much of a chance. You got nothing to lose by throwing
100%.
caution to the wind.
100%. Okay, so your go-to maps, guys, in terms of as a player that you enjoy playing, and then one that you enjoy watching people struggle with. So let's start with that, Chloe. Which one do you enjoy playing, and which one do you like observing?
I would say my favorite map has to be Mirage, just because it's like it's an Orpa's paradise. You can literally run everywhere, you can get picks everywhere, and people always think, oh, there's a gap here, and then suddenly you run into an Orp. So it's my favorite one, but also tactically, there's so many ways that you can condition your opponent. You know, you can go B 30 times, and then on the 31st time you go A, and then they're sitting there 5-man on B. Like, guys, why are they not on B? So that one for me is very fun. I think the one that I enjoy watching people struggle on is Dust 2, because it's the most played map, and then like, you know, every single round there's a scout mid, you get headshot crossing the doors, and then you just like, guys, can we just smoke mid?
Yeah,
Just smoke mid, please.
Okay, and for you?
I'd say my favorite map to play would be Overpass, and as I was saying earlier, I just love how it rewards tactical and methodical approaches, strategic approaches where you can go much deeper on the map. It's not just like a surface level kind of map where it's about who can get the most kills. It's about how you actually go about your approach, and that's kind of what I enjoy, is just putting that extra attention to detail when I'm playing the game. Also in Orpa's Paradise, I love abusing the Orp myself, so certainly does help out a lot in that regard. And then I'd say to watch, I've actually really been enjoying Ancient for a while now. I think it's probably the most, if not one of the top 2 or 3 50-50 maps. As Slowey was saying earlier, you get T-sided maps and you get CT-sided maps. Ancients is one of the maps that you can actually extract a lot of value out of both halves. So you don't get these situations where one team will dominate one half and then the other team dominates the same half. It's like a constant contest throughout both halves, back and forth. And I also think it really lends itself to an entertaining style of Counter-Strike where there's always action. There's never really like these lulls in play where there's 20 or 30 seconds with not much going on. There's always a gunfight, there's always space being taken, there's always a big flank, so I feel like there's always something to enjoy.
Okay, and there we go, and that's what we want, is that action.
The entertainment
we want to
factor.
enjoy that,
Yeah.
exactly. Wow, okay. I definitely learned a lot about maps today. So join the conversation and let us know what your go-to map is. Next week, we kick off the Rocket League season. But for now, you can catch all your gaming news and updates at VS Gaming World on all social media platforms.